Interracial relationships don't always make people less racist. Right off the bat, I'm not a fan of this title because it's presuming something. It's presuming that relationships are for something else other than loving somebody from another race, right? That they're supposed to have this other job, like they're supposed to have this other effect. Like it's not enough that they have to be, fighting racism or something. And that's not what it's about, all right? That's like a burden. You're putting a burden on certain relationships. It's about if two people like each other and they love each other that much, that's it. They don't need this tax where if they do, they have to start advocating. None of that. That's something they can do, and that's great, and maybe that would be an advantage, but that's not what they're for, and other people feel clearly that's okay. So it's like a lesbian couple. Okay, so the landmark United States Supreme Court ruling in Loving v. Commonwealth of Virginia abolished bans on interracial marriage in the United States in 1967, but a new academic paper from Rice University and Texas A&M University said an uptick in racial relationships since then has not ended discriminatory tendencies even among individuals who are in these relationships. So many problems with this. Okay, they're not supposed to do that. And if you notice, it's a hidden presumption in the writing that's what they didn't say it directly, but it's a hidden presumption, as if it's supposed to end all discriminatory tendencies. Okay, so this person's already coming off with the picture. They're not coming off as heteronormative. These relationships are for them in some way. It's not. The paper, Mixed Races, Maintaining Racism. Again, look, if we take a baby of a different race and you put it with like a mother of a different race, they freak out. Okay, the babies have this already. It's not something that needs to be taught to have. You don't need to teach racism. That's bullshit with the whole. They've been taught it out of you, but it's not something that needs to be training in you. It's going to develop automatically just by association of the group, just by looking the same, just by familiarity. It's automatically going to happen. But these people are still with these other beliefs that, oh my God, it's some thing from the beginning of time, and it's somehow tied to misogyny, which is not. Has nothing. Those two topics have nothing to do with each other. Okay. Race is the number one example of oppression that they use for every other oppression. If they want to talk about gay, they always swap characters with black people and use that as if they're necessarily inherently the same. They're not. One's not. That's why when you have interracial relationships, they're somehow connected to homosexual relationships, which they're not. That's groups that tag on. You might even say tether on to other things to their advantage. Considering the connection between interracial families, social distance, and racial inequality in this online and will appear in an upcoming edition of the journal Family Theory and Review. Okay, so it's not science. What I mean by that is family theory. It's theory, and it's not science. People trying to control families, probably, right? Researchers Jennifer Bratter, a professional psychologist at Rice, and Mary Campbell, a professor of psychology at Texas A&M University, examined existing research on close interracial relationships to see how these friendship or romance impacted overall attitudes about race. Okay, we're dealing with very shoddy measures here. This is called a qualitative analysis as opposed to a quantitative, which means the people who are doing the research have to give their kind of opinion. It's not like this direct fact. It's, well, I feel like this is, or right. And as far as I know, I think it's two white lesbians doing this study. There are a lot of assumptions that people who enter into an intimate interracial relationship at a minimum do not hold stereotypes that would prevent them from dating or marrying someone of a different race. Let me say that again. This is a quote by somebody. There are a lot of assumptions that people who enter into intimate interracial relationships at a minimum do not hold stereotypes that would prevent them from dating. So this sounds more like this is about, there are stereotypes that are preventing people from race mixing. This is what this is about. This is the whole rainbow, everybody is one race, LGBT, right? Mind you, there are two white lesbians who are talking. It's so important to know who's talking, because when you do that back check, every time you read an article, you start to see the patterns of who's really pushing what and who's not. Right? It's a lot of information. Okay, I did a back check already. However, current research doesn't support this assumption. Right? Why should it? For example, the researchers note that one study finds that white people with best friends who are black still express anti-black racism. Anti-black racism is so broad it can be anything. I'm not you got to articulate what you mean. I'm not buying the whole just anti-black and I have to guess into which way it is anti-black. Right? Remember, being pro-biracial is being anti-black. I want you to remember that, because that's the kind of anti-black they're talking about, is like, right? And this is a white lesbian who benefits not from it directly but indirectly, right? Sometimes describing their friend as an exception to their beliefs about the large group, because they probably are. They probably are on average. That's a fact. They probably are. That's often how they end up being friends if they are. So I mean, that's just a normal thing, and that's okay. Sometimes people are just more compatible with another specific person of another race, right? And some of these close interracial relationships are sustained by avoiding any discussion of race. See what I mean? Racial inequality and survey respondents reported. That's not the purpose, right? These researchers are saying, well, no, you have a relationship. You got to start doing no. Why don't you do that? That's for you. If you want, this is about the two people who are in a relationship. It's not about their race. It's about the two people who love it, and that's it. It's not about your agenda. It's not about what you think is going to help you as an LGBT person. It's not about even preventing racism. It could be, but it's not it's not their job. It's just two people want to be together. That's it. Leave them alone, right? And what bothers me more that it's white lesbians pushing this shit. Like, yeah, you can't just get together. You gotta fight for get out of here. Research on racial preferences in online dating shows that some daters use race as a limiting factor for identifying. Of course. You retarded? And this is where the same kind of person would argue the same thing about like sex. Like, oh my God, they prefer the fact that they don't date like both sexes. That's some kind of sexism. They would say that. Heterosexuality is sexist. So you have to down the line. Yeah, of course that would happen. Why not? We have preferences. Why am I going to look for people I don't prefer? Like basically somebody saying I prefer this race or this race on my thing. Right? I do have a limit. I'm not like, what do you mean? Like, why can't we have that? This is not a bad thing. For those who are open in interracial dating, research shows that they may still express preferences. Yeah, that align with. They're not. Yeah, but they're real. They're not just stereotypes. They're facts. They're not just stereotypes. So she's in this idea where like if something is a stereotype, that means it's not real. No, they all come from somewhere, and it is a stereotype. It just means that stereotypes are caricatures of reality. They're not like they're usually just kind of an but they're based on truth. They're just based on a subtle truth. It just may not be as common as it is, but compared to one group, you might find that character more common than in the other. And you do find this. I'm not trying to be anti-black, but there are tendencies that we find in the black population. You don't find. That's just a fact. That's not racism. That's a fact. Some stereotypes are true, right? Black people on average seem to be better at sports, right? That's a fact. That's also a stereotype. But that doesn't mean it's not a fact. But this person is playing off that. It's not like it's basically shaming people for having preferences and not even about heterosexual relationships either. The reason why LGBT doesn't like that because it destroys the families. They see that race is a family, right? A Bratter and Campbell wrote that interracial relationship is not an indicator of openness. Extended family members, quite the opposite. In fact, actually, I would argue the proper wording would be there's a slight correlation. That's it. You'd say there's a slight correlation. It's not a strong correlation, but there definitely is a correlation. That's it. Indicator is bad language. It's somebody being this person knows how to articulate. They're choosing that on purpose, right? Unfortunately, evidence from experience in interracial couples suggests this is not always. Yeah, it's not supposed to be always the case. Yeah, that's why I said it's a slight correlation, meaning it happens more than 50%. Now, what does she mean by interracial contact now? Right? Undermine the racism of the extended family member. Counter the couple and increase positive social action between different. No, that's not their job. They're two people in a relationship. You don't get to, because they're interracial, you throw on this tax that now if you're in a relationship, you have to do this. Your job is to confront the partner. So basically, you have to confront them with the whole racism. You got to bring it on their family. You got to shame. Like, that's too much. That's too much work. Maybe you'll never date a person of that race again, but you just found that one person that one time. It's right. It's irrelevant. Whenever you see like anti-racist, when they're white, they're almost always gay because they have to have a reason to go against their own people, right? In addition to facing greater criticism from peers and extended families, Bratter said that these individuals in interracial relationships also reported receiving less support from their families when compared to couples. And of course, there's going to be that white uncle who's going to be like, you're not dating that you're not dating that nigger, right? I've had that. You're not going out with that. This is what we'd expect. She's reading this and she's writing this as if the expectation should be the opposite of what everybody would expect reality to be. This was especially true for white mothers of biracial children. Bradier said this suggests that extended family members, of course they don't. That's what I said. They get it the worst. They get cut off the worst. That's why sometimes I find they end up losing their white identity. And people, it's funny because I don't know. It comes only from black women and it comes only from divestors. This idea that somehow white women who are somehow they're racist. No. Okay, racist people, they don't want to procreate with people of that race. They really don't. Only maybe black people are more likely to do that. Sure, you're going to get some, and it's very easy to go around and look at large numbers and pick up all the anecdotes, but on average, it's extremely low. Okay, black women go around, pick up every little anecdote they can find, and you'll see it on here. And the stresses these couples face are compounding amongst those which are low. No kidding. Yeah. So what it means is that's the stressors, because you got to be careful, because lesbians are trying to use this argument for themselves. So lesbians have the lowest rate of relationship success, the lowest rate of marriage success, most likely to divorce. They work out the least. Okay. And what they try to do is they try to grab the black explanation. So the explanation here, that would be, let's say, with like interracial relationships, will be that the family side, they put stress, almost unnecessary stress. So someone might not like somebody, and someone might say something that the other person might lie. Oh, that person said something racist, they didn't. You have all that bullshit. So you have those two black and the white sides that are, and the other members that don't like it, and they're trying to sabotage it. They're like, I've seen my brother's having a little trouble with his wife lately. I mean, my mom will kind of she doesn't like his wife. Right now, she's basically Latina, a little bit, mixed black lately. But she doesn't like his wife, and so she'll reinterpret what she's saying as a bit more negative to him, and it's like she gets involved. It's like, you know what I'm saying? And that over time has stress. Lesbians use the excuse that the world is just so anti-lesbian that it causes pressure, and that's what causes them to not be successful. And so they snatched it onto this argument, which is a completely different, it's not related, and they try to use that as why they beat women the most. Why do they, or are they the most abusive women? They're going, oh, well, it's the stress caused by the... I'll tell you what. Gay men, homosexual men are the least abusive, okay? It turns out actually, what's hilarious is all this stuff that we hear in the media, it's actually heterosexual relationships, when both partners are straight, are actually the most successful and least abusive. That's the hilarious part. But gay men are one of the least as well. They have the least, and lesbians have the most. So, and society is way more anti-homosexual and gay towards the men than they are the women. It's not even comparable, okay? If you go on the right wing, they love lesbians on the right. They'd be like, yeah. They're thinking with their penises. They're not thinking very far of the consequences. But they hate the gay men. Even when you hear about all this, like all the trans stuff, it's all blamed on the men. The women are the victims because the radical feminists are there, and the conservative men who want to be tough. When they're talking about the gays, people don't understand. No, they're really just talking about the gays. They're really talking about the gays. And that has to do with the Bible, right? Because the Bible only really talks about punishment between men. It doesn't talk about any, it's silent on the women. And so you have a lot of religious people, they're thinking the men. There's these queer men, and they're causing all the people it's about pedophilia, and they're trying to get them to try. It's not. There's this whole... The lesbian be really trying it. They be really trying to say, oh, because we're women, and that's like a double. We get it way worse, but they don't even get it close. Like 1,000 to 1 when it comes to hate crimes between the two. It's not even relatable, but there are some gay men, because they want that interracial hierarchy. They'll agree. They'll go, yeah, the lesbians have it worse. Man, where? Where? The lesbian is in the straight section. The bisexual is not. They put the bisexual, none of that shit, right? Because they don't want to see. So they try to make themselves these victims, knowing that the intersectional hierarchy doesn't work there. Gay men have it by far the worst. It's not even a fucking topic. And I'm even like that, so I know, because I have that. We have it discussed. Straight men have like a response that they would have if they were looking at maggots. That's another study, right? When they see like two men kiss, it's not even close. Right? They see two women. The reason why a lot of men like them, because they think if there's a man there, it's gay, and so they'd rather just have two. But the reasoning is very different. So by having two women, well, it's not gay. But they don't understand that those are not even real lesbians. Those are like those like lipstick, they're part-time, and they're usually with a man. Or they're not even real. Like the real lesbians are like men. The real biological permanent lesbians that are always with women, they're like men. Those are the butch type. And another reason why the right has a problem with recognizing that is because they have to believe that homosexuality is socialized. They have that whole, like, you can pray away the gay. That belief, it makes it hard for them to recognize the obvious biological connection, and that is not something you can just socialize. Like these kids, even when they somehow have been converted back to being straight, they act like gay. They still have all the same mannerisms. They have even similar ideologies. This was especially true for white mothers of biracial children. Yeah, common sense, right? I've been saying that because you have these divestors being out here like as if it's like hard for the black. It's not. Why? Because the black men don't really have the power. They were conquered. They haven't been able to do anything about it for many years. Their women have been being slept with. They couldn't do anything. And so relatively even now, they just don't have the power to enforce as much as the white male side can enforce on the woman breaking the code. They can't withhold, they're not going to withhold that you're not going to go to university. They don't have that power. So it's very different. The power dynamics make it different and actually hardest for them. The white side is where she gets the protection from. So if they're ditching her, well, she has no protection. She's kind of stuck on the streets. It's especially true for all white mothers and biracial children. Yeah, I know that. Rather, this suggests that extended family members on average are not as involved in the lives of course. Yeah, because one, they're also genetically less related to them. We would recognize it biologically. We would expect that, but who doesn't expect it? The LGBT. They have to believe that everybody's been tricked to be straight, right? To make themselves feel better, to center themselves. And that's not an evil thing on them. That's just what we do. We center ourselves in our world because we are the center of our own universe. Racism tends to be higher when you're in the more rugged places. It's just they're a bit more ignorant, so that's going to reflect that. So what can be done to improve the relationships? You see what I'm trying to say? Leave them alone, lesbians. What do you have to do with that, right? What they mean is to improve, like they basically force people who are not into it or don't agree with the reunion. You do more damage than done because it's not your relationship. The scholars said, it's white lesbians. The scholars said more research must be done, but the designing interventions that help build support with and beyond families is a good place to start. We hope future research will address how to foster more open conversation. What they mean is harass the other family members about racism. The whole feel bad for me, you don't know what we go through, you got to prepare the world for you, and this usually leads to like your kids got to be a part of activism, right? Your kids have to be activism for our ideology. Right. This really has the potential to expand support and could go a long way in addressing the underlying vulnerability faced by many. I would say that would sabotage it. I think you got to give them time, let them build into it. Sometimes it's like a matter of time. Like, even my family, my uncles get over it over time. If you just try to rush in their face when they're mad, it doesn't work. Leave our families alone.